My. All right. Well, this morning, earlier today, I was sitting here doing some work on my OBS, get some stuff set up to do some streaming tonight. I was going to do some reaction streams, and I got a text from a guy that I've, gotten pretty friendly with through the internet, streaming and such, and that is Vulcan right here from the Vulcan Soapbox. He and Freshly Snipes up here, and another guy, he knows. They have this little podcast called the Vulcan Soapbox, and I know you've seen me on it before. Many of you have anyway. I actually was on this stream. I believe I was at one time. I don't know where I'm at now. I don't know if I ended up breaking camp, getting off early that night or what, but it's unusual for me to not be there. 'Cause, I like being up front in living color in the middle of everything. In the middle of everything. But anyway, so I was sitting there getting some stuff set up, some videos lined out, some scenes created in my OBS, which is the software that I use for creating all of this scene that you see here, And, with this scene right here, like I can turn that whole thing off just like that. You see, poof, where'd it go? Well, that's all done in my OBS. But I was setting some stuff up so I could do a stream this afternoon, early evening, roll with it. And Mr. Soapbox here, Vulcan Soapbox, I just came up with that idea. I'm going to start calling him Mr. Soapbox. But no, Vulcan here, he sent a text in a little group text asking for some input on a discussion that he's having with this guy right here in this video clip. Looking for some input on, because this guy, what I got to say about this old guy here, I mean, he don't look real smart, but he's pretty smart, got a big head too, don't he? But he seems to constantly be trying to sharpen his debate skills and sharpen his presentation and stuff like that. Seems to be very open to the idea that he may not be able to see the forest for the trees in different areas, so he's real actively asking people that he respects. I like to think that he respects them, but he may actually ask people who he don't respect for input, just as a kind of a measure of what's going on. Well, he set this video link right here, queued up, just to ask some input on how he could have handled a debate discussion better. Don't ask me for advice if you ain't ready to have a seat and sit a spell, okay? So I started to respond to it in the little text, because I do it with one hand, because I got big old hands. I'm not like President Trump. I got big hands, okay? And so I was texting there with my little one finger, and I thought, man, it's going to turn into an encyclopedia. I was already at my OBS, at my desk, had my everything going on, I didn't have my hat on or nothing, didn't have my lights on, because I wasn't planning on streaming. I said, well, I'll just pull up OBS and just make a short video. Well, I don't do short videos well. I don't do short conversations very well, And so it turned into quite an extensive video as I went on commentating on the dynamics of the debate on this video. And then when I got finished, I said, well, good dog, man, I could just do this as a live premiere, which is a recorded video. This is all recorded. This is a pre-recorded. As a live premiere, it's a recorded video, but YouTube streams it out as if it's a live. So the live chat over here is working. It goes out promoted as a live stream, all that kind of good stuff. If I were monetized, but I'm still trying to get my watch hours up. I'm fairly short on my watch hours, and most of that is my fault. Because when I live stream or I post videos, I get a little bit of traffic on them. But I just am not consistent with it enough yet to really get my watch hours up. So, but once I get monetized, you'll be able to go right over, let's see, where am I pointing? Yeah, over here. My camera's kind of backwards on my green screen. Right over here, you'll be able to, more kind of down here. Yeah, it'll be more kind of down here. There'll be a little dollar sign you can click on. You send in super chats, and you'll be able to buy memberships to the channel and stuff like that to help me pay for all this software and computer equipment and be able to get me a new shirt, too, and everything. So I just decided, when I got finished, it was a lot longer than I thought it was going to be, but it always is. And so I just said to myself, well, self, that's what I say when I'm talking to myself. I said, well, self, you ought to just polish this up a little bit, and just do a live premiere content, because some of the information that I'm going to share with him, most of which you probably already know because he's pretty sharp, but sometimes it's good to be reminded of things that you already know, but maybe you're not thinking of. So polish it up a little bit, and some of the stuff I shared with, I told him my chat may enjoy hearing and may learn something out of that sort of stuff. And I'm doing that. Why am I doing that, Dane? Why would you do such a thing? Because that's just the kind of fella I am. That's just the kind of fella I am. I'm just that kind of fella. I'm just a good dude, I mean, if I do say so myself. I mean, Mama always said, he who tooteth not his own horn does not have his horn toothed. Toot, toot, I'm tooting my horn. That's just the kind of fella I am. So here we go. Tell me something in the chat down here. Get over in the live chat. Please, please, please subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet. And don't just click subscribe. Click the little drop-down menu. There'll be a little bell up there. Look like it's got two little ears on it. It's supposed to be a bell ringing, but two little ears. Click that. That way you'll get the notifications next time I go on live or I upload something or I post something over in the community tab, and you'll get a notification. Because YouTube keeps telling me that out of all of the subscribers I have now, which 1,271, I believe, what it was this morning, out of all of them, none of y'all have notifications turned on. Y'all just subscribed. And I guess you just hope that, a little angel, a little butterfly comes and tells you, they ain't streaming. But if you ring that bell, I'm not a singer, but if you ring that bell, then YouTube will notificate you. I know that's not a word. They'll notify you next time I upload something, next time I go live, and that way you will not miss one moment of the Big Daddy Podcast, okay? And so you ring the bell, subscribe, like the stream, and if you will, share it with your friends, your families, your in-laws. Tell them how much you love the Big Daddy Podcast. And if you don't love the Big Daddy Podcast, share it with them anyway, and that'll teach them to be such an asshole. I'm Big Daddy. My. Let me get my camera adjusted a little bit here. All right. Yeah, I'm just sitting here this morning getting some stuff set up in my OBS so I can do some streaming this afternoon. I'm going to do some reaction videos and stuff, but you sending me this and answering this question in text is unbelievably impossible. So I figured since I already had my OBS open and I was setting up a bunch of browser sources to do some reaction streams and stuff too, I figured I would just throw you a little link in there real quick, see if I couldn't help you out a little bit.
Here's my question. What verse says we need to know that information? You just asked a really good question. I think it's irrelevant, but you think it's relevant. That's where we disagree. I'm saying,
thou shalt not do so unto the Lord. How do you know if you're doing? I'm answering your question. I'm answering your questions. How do they know not to do something if they don't know where it came from? No. How do you know? So for example, if
okay, if I was, this is more of a hermeneutic exegetical type conversation, more so than just straight up logic, but you could use all of them together. So what I would address if I was going to get into more of a exegetical sort of a conversation with this right here, his question is flawed. So what I would do, because I figured out just recently, actually, relatively recently, that my main go-to when I'm involved in some logical debate is the same as what Andrew Wilson does, theoretically speaking, in that we're both attack the presuppositions of a person's argument. You see, so people make, I know you know this, but people make these assumptions in their mind. They have these suppositions in their mind that they believe are correct, and then they build their argument on that. So he's asking, well, if they don't know, here, I'll back that up just a minute so I'll make sure I get the wording correct.
I can incorporate it into my religious practices. I'm praying. And I go, I'm going to pray because he's
get Easter. That's not, it didn't come.
Says we need to know that information. You just asked a really good question. I think it's irrelevant, but you think it's relevant. That's where we disagree. Fine. Hold on, Hear my question. What verse
Here
it
says
is.
we need to know that information? You just asked a really good question. I think it's irrelevant, but you think it's relevant. That's where we disagree. I'm saying,
Thou
what
shalt
verse?
not do so unto the Lord.
No, no,
How
no,
do
no,
you
no. Your
know if
question
you're doing?
was,
I'm
where did it come
answering
from?
your question.
Okay.
I'm answering your questions. How do they know not to do something if they don't know where it came from?
Okay, what he's presupposing there is that obedience to the Lord hangs on whether or not someone knows the history of a particular, what he considers an idolatrous act. Okay, so that's one presupposition I would attack right there, is whether or not obedience requires some deep, profound understanding of the history of where some act came from. See, I would build an argument beginning there because he's making a claim, he's stating it as a question, but his presupposition is that in order for someone to repent of a sin or to abstain from the mere appearance of sin, that they need to know where Halloween came from, or Easter came from, or the Yule log, or Santa Claus, or Christmas trees, or whatever. That in itself is not true. See, so not necessarily on a debate panel that's set up to deal with logic and critical thinking in a sense, in a more secular, less religious type context. But if I was in a situation where I was having to logically parse out things in scripture, things in religion, I would start off there, and I would challenge him to support his assertion that it's a requirement that people need to know the history and the background of a practice in order to figure out whether or not that practice is in fact sinful, idolatrous, blasphemous, whatever. And then, and only then, will they be able to abstain from it. Okay? So, and it can be demonstrated. I don't have to know that murder is a sin. I mean, I don't have to know where murder came from and what caused the murder and who invented murder to know I don't need to murder. You know, I don't have to know the history of adultery in order to be obedient to God saying, thou shalt not commit adultery. See, so that's one of the foundations that he's establishing his argument on when he says, how would they know if they don't know where it came from?
If you're doing, I'm answering your question. I'm answering your questions. How do they know not to do something if they don't know where it came from?
Simple answer. They know not to do it ultimately because God said, thou shalt not. God said, don't do it. So what now?
How do you know? So for example, if like prime example, people do yoga, but if you know about Hinduism, you know a true Hindu, they're gonna tell you there's no Hinduism without yoga, there's no yoga without Hinduism.
That's their opinion.
Okay, he's dragging you into a more. Some of the ways I articulate what I would do, some of the verbiage may not be precise. Okay, but I'm constantly coming across people who communicate in different ways and they think differently than I do, and I will hear them articulate something that I've been articulating for years and years and years, but articulating it real loose and clumsy, but the best I can get in my head. And I will sometimes hear someone say something to communicate an idea that I've been communicating for years and years and years, but they'll do it in such a way that it's so pithy, so efficient. And I mean, I feel like I've seen a beautiful piece of art when I hear somebody do something like that. I mean, I'll get plumb excited. I'll call Deidre here. I'll say, listen to how he explained this. And I'll say, I've been trying to explain that for years and I could not word it like that. So just a warning, sometimes, I may use a word or a phrase that's imprecise to what I'm trying to describe. But let me back this up so I can get him to say that again.
Yoga. But if you know about Hinduism, you know a true Hindu, they're gonna tell you that
Okay, so what he's doing here, he's pulling you into what I think of, and this may not be the right word, but what I consider a linear argument. Okay, so he's wanting to argue the surface level. He thinks it's deep theology and philosophy. It ain't. He's wanting to argue the verse for verse, the linear track of, is this what the Bible says? Is this idea true? 1 + 1 = 2. He's wanting to argue that. Okay, so like if you go to China, someone who's not been educated in the Western civilization, but they can do arithmetic in China, and you show them an equation that says the marks, the notations that we call a 1, a plus symbol, a 1, an equal symbol, and a 2, and you ask them, is 1 + 1 2? They're likely going to not know what you're asking them. But if they look at those, they're not going to know. Now, I don't know what the Chinese word is, and I know Chinese is not a language. There's a bunch of different languages in China, just like Indian is not a language. There's a bunch of different languages in India, okay? I get it. But anyway, so I don't know what the Chinese words are for 1 + 1 = 2, but they're not going to understand what you're asking them, theoretically speaking. So what you would have to do if you can't get a translator or translate the word somehow is get into the number theory of it, okay? Like 1 time, or like let's say 2 × 2 × 2 would give you like square inches or square yards or whatever, right? And so we know that when we have a number to the third power, we know we're talking about that number being squared. I didn't do well in math in high school, and part of the way through college, I didn't do well in math because math, the way it's taught to us, is a series of memorizing marks on paper. And so it boils down to this unique mark, this unique mark, this other unique mark, unique marks, this unique mark. That's kind of what it adds up to. Now, I'm an intelligent person. I don't have dyscalculia or anything like that, but I'm saying that that's a very overemphasized kind of hyperbolic way of explaining how we teach math. We just remember the marks, remember what each symbol means, and if you see this mark and this mark and this mark, then that means this mark. But the number theory behind it really isn't explained. So unless you happen to take a specific class for that, or you take higher level geometry or something. But 2 + 2 = 4. 2 × 2 = 4. Well, 2 + 2 = 4 too, but you get what I'm saying. 2 × 2 = 4. 4 × 2 = 8. So 2 × 2 × 2 = 8 square yards. Okay, so we understand that. But someone who doesn't understand numbers, they're not going to understand what you're saying to them. But if you show them that 2 × 2 × 2 = 8 square yards, if you can show them that in a symbol, that the third power is equivalent to a physical object of height, width, and length, and that's why we have the 2 × 2 × 2 height, width, and length, then you can communicate that concept to them, okay? And then you're able to get past that. What you're dealing with, I know that's a very clunky, inefficient way of trying to explain it, but this is on the fly. This is the only coffee I've had this morning, and I've only drank about half of it. So, and don't be making fun of my little bitty cup, okay? I ain't gay. I don't think I'm gay. I've really never thought about it that much, but anyway, I digress. So I think that's kind of what you got going on here. Is you're kind of talking about like two different. Let me play it again.
Answering your question. I'm answering your questions. How do they know not to do something if they don't know where it came from?
No.
Okay, yeah. So he's pulling you into this this linear argument. I'm going to tie that back to the math I was just telling you. He's pulling you into this linear argument of wanting to say, like, 1 + 1 = 2, right? And what you're, I don't know if you're trying to do it, but I think you kind of are, but maybe just not doing it very well or efficiently, is you're trying to get him to look past the marks on the paper to actually get into the number theory, so to speak, which in our arena would be the philosophical underpinnings of what he's claiming, because what he's claiming is incorrect and untrue. But if all he deals with is the numbers of the equation, and if he keeps you on that surface level, then you're just going to continue being frustrated and you're going to continue running around in circles, because just like you told him, well, that's your opinion. I try to avoid using that phrase as a retort or anything like that, because a lot of people say that just because they don't have a better argument. Well, that's your opinion. Well, no kidding. It's my opinion, but is it correct or not? So that's just not a good response. But the reality is, if he keeps you on that linear argument of just responding, like only responding to the claims that he makes, see, then all he's got to do is keep shifting that goalpost and moving up and down and sideways and repeating himself, but rewording what he's repeating to where it sounds like it's a response, but it's just a repetition. He can keep doing that until he just tires you out, because you're letting him lead you in that argument in the direction he wants to go. It's kind of like, you'll see like a police officer. Like if a police officer is trained at jiu-jitsu and he goes to arrest somebody and they go to pull away from him, he doesn't just pull back on them. And when they pull harder, pulls back on them harder. He doesn't do that. This just dawned on me. I think this is going to be a great illustration. I have had an epiphany. Anyway, so the police officer doesn't do that. Why? Because he's more skilled at the combat sports, hopefully, than the criminal he's trying to apprehend. So he will use trained maneuvers to use that criminal's body weight against him, for instance, and leverage, and he'll say his center of gravity, to be able to control that person and apprehend him. Okay? Arguments that go like this argument you're going on right here, he's trying to drag you, you're in a tug of war. He's trying to drag you one way and you're trying to drag him back the other way. Well, what you need to do is consider, more of a jiu-jitsu type move here. So what I would do when he brought this up about Hinduism and karma.
I'm answering your question. I'm answering your questions. How do they know not to do something if they don't know where it came from?
That's another example where, you should have, I call it flanking them, because they expect you to come on with a frontal attack, but instead you sneak around here in the woods and you come out from the side to attack their argument. I don't think that's a bad faith, dishonest way to argue, but it is, cunning. I call it skill. I like to call it skill, but I call it flanking them, because they want you to respond head on, and you actually come around the side and you explore their argument and defeat it that way. So, how can they know so I would flank them there by asking them, I would explain to them that God said don't do it, so you don't do it. I don't have to know.
How do you know? So for example, if like prime example, people do yoga, but if you know about Hinduism, a true Hindu, they're gonna tell you there's no Hinduism without yoga. There's no yoga without Hinduism.
With this right here, like you named a fallacy.
That's the Hindus. Who else would better know?
Again.
Who else would better know than the people that made it?
That's called appeal to authority fallacy. Again, that's what.
Okay, and it is. It is an appeal to an authority fallacy, but I think a better fallacy to use to explain to him, which, keep in mind, I don't think this dude up here, I don't think he really is interested at all in learning how to actually use logic to practice critical thinking. I think he's a lot more interested in coming into groups and battling with them in order for them to recognize how smart and spiritual and what a wise religious guru he is. That's what I think. So, I mean, like, you can't help somebody that don't want to be helped. I know you and I kind of disagree on that in some aspects, but what I would have gone at him with was the no true Scotsman fallacy. Do you see what I'm saying? To where he's saying he's not necessarily committing the no true Scotsman, but he's appealing to Hindus committing the no true Scotsman fallacy. There is no Hinduism without yoga. There is no yoga without Hinduism. Well, are you some sort of an expert on Hinduism? And that doesn't necessarily mean you have a religious degree. But I mean, how many books have you read studying Hinduism? How many Hindus have you interviewed? How many Hindus maybe do you know in your personal life that you spend time around, that you've gotten to know on a personal level, who have explained Hinduism to you? You see? So he's made this claim. Again, he's not necessarily committing the no true Scotsman fallacy, because he's not saying, well, if they don't do Hinduism, then they're not a Hindu. That would basically be the no true Scotsman. But he's saying, he's citing other people, Hindus, committing the no true Scotsman fallacy. Okay, so I would do that, and I would probably, if the conversation went on long enough, explore with him the fact that there are many Christians out there who claim to be Christians, raised in the church, been Christian their whole life, so to speak. But there's a whole bunch about Christianity they don't understand, or if they understand it, they understand it incorrectly. And then I would ask him why it is that he thinks that many Christians will say things like cleanliness is next to godliness. You know, years ago, Deidre and I got into a conversation with one of her sisters and our brother-in-law about whether or not the Bible taught that blacks and whites shouldn't mix with one another. I know a lot of otherwise good, God-fearing Christians who believe that the Bible teaches that blacks and whites should not intermarry or anything like that. They believe that. They'll tell you that. You know, I'm not just talking about ignorant people who are trying to be racist and hurtful towards black people. I mean, those people do exist, of course. But I'm talking about people that they genuinely believe that the Bible teaches that, even though it doesn't. So then I would explore with him and ask him why it is that if there are poorly discipled, uninformed Christians who believe things that are incorrect, then what objective reason does he have to believe that there aren't Hindu counterparts? I mean, Hinduism is a much older religion. It's a much more complex religion. I mean, they have over 300,000 gods in Hinduism. And because India itself, and a lot of people in the West mind, is a very mystical, secretive, dark sort of subcontinent. And the Indian people, which are an extreme minority in the United States especially, I can't necessarily say the West because the British Commonwealth has a whole bunch of them in them. But, it's kind of an aloof, esoteric kind of an air around the Indian people in the United States. So that kind of adds to this sort of a mysterious thing. So because of that, a lot of people think of Hinduism like someone who's a Hindu is very profoundly educated, what we would call discipled in Hinduism. Now, once you get to know Indians, I've been to India. That's an appeal to authority, but I'm just saying I have firsthand experience in this. Once you get to know Hindus, you find out that there are some Hindus that are very religious and they understand a lot about their religion and its history and its practices and blah, blah, blah. And then there are some people that are Hindu because they were born into Hinduism and that's just kind of but they roll with it. And there's some people who think that they're very, very serious and sincere followers of Hinduism, but they've been taught a lot of stuff that Hinduism doesn't teach. And there's this whole spectrum, just like there is in all other religions. So I would have addressed that with him just like that.
What I'm saying, you don't realize.
So who's the authority then? Who's the authority then in that?
Again, I like what you said. God is the authority, and God didn't say that.
Okay, here in this situation right here, I'm hoping I'm explaining this correctly. If you can hear my dogs barking, I promise I am not doing a T-Reason impersonation. They never bark. I don't know what's going on. Just unless someone like maybe knocks on the door. But I mean, I live in an area where if a car comes down my street, they're going to visit one of my neighbors. So I don't just have people knock on my door. So I didn't hear anybody knock on my door, but if there's a noise out there, it's somebody out there. It's probably an Amazon driver or something. But it's had to happen while I was doing this. I am not trying to impersonate T-Reason, okay? Anyway, so I'm hoping I'm explaining this, my idea of the tug of war, the linear argument versus a more jujitsu maneuver, well enough to where you get what I'm saying. But this is where, again, he's pulling you in the direction he wants you to go. He's controlling the line of argumentation that he wants you to defend against. And in doing that, he's framing it within his presuppositions. See, but you're not really attacking those presuppositions. You see, it's kind of like when you see two women in a video fighting, and a lot of times they'll lean way back, and then they'll kind of do this, and they just kind of slapping and hitting at each other with no actual strategy. You know, but they lean way back, and the body works off, and if they do hit the other woman, I mean, it's going to be at the end of their arm. There's going to be no spring action. It's going to be at the end of their arm, and that's kind of an illustration of the argument going on here, at any rate. So he asked you, I'm going to have to go out there and holler at them dogs. Hang on just 1 minute. Got to holler at them like they're damn children. And then they come in here in my office with their little tails wagging. Look at these worthless animals. Look at them. They're worthless. See? All right. That's enough of that. I don't know what they were barking at. I don't know. And there's somebody. Let me look here. Okay, yeah. I saw where somebody texted me. They wanted to make sure I wasn't Deidre out there knocking on the door and forgot her house key. That'd be bad, wouldn't it? Oh, well. Anyway, here we go. Now I got my camera all messed up with these mongrels. All right. Anyway, so he's asking you, who is the authority? He's wanting you to argue against that, when what I would have tried to do, and this is what I struggled to get this dude to do, because I actually want to teach this dude how to think more critically and how to use logic better. So I will try to pursue him into the philosophical ideas that he claims is true, instead of just bickering back and forth about his claim. I try to go a little deeper than that to get him to consider the philosophical foundations of what he believes, because I think if he could ever get to the point to understand that he's convinced that what he believes is true because he's basing that on philosophical errors, well, then I don't have to actually deal with the actual claims that he made, if I can show that those claims are based on faulty philosophies and ideas, you see. And so that's right here. I'm going to back him up again, and we can hear exactly what he says again.
Again, that's what I'm saying. You don't realize.
So who's the authority then? Who's the authority then in that?
Again, I like what you said. God is the authority, and God didn't say that. They said that. I like that. You know,
the Hindus, who else would better know?
Again.
Who else would better know than the people that made it?
That's called appeal to authority fallacy. Again, that's what I'm saying. You don't realize.
So who's the authority then? Who's the authority then in that?
Again, I like what you said.
So in this argument, I would go at him to ask, basically what I would, these dogs are distracting the hell out of me. I will be right back. Let me go see who that is. All right. I guess they heard the wind blowing or something. Nobody's out there, I don't know. At any rate, I was able to get my little thing of water, though. I was about to thirst to death. All right. Anyway, so again, when he's saying who is the authority, he's making he has a presupposition that someone being the authority is actually necessary for your argument to be correct or incorrect or whatever.
That's called appeal to authority fallacy. Again, that's what I'm saying. You don't realize.
So who's the authority then? Who's the authority then in that?
Again, I like what you said. God is the authority, and God didn't say that. They said that. I like your answer originally, which was God picks what's pagan and what's not. My whole point is
that's very interesting how we get to move that goalpost. When we're over here, it's, well, he didn't have to say that, but over here he's saying, well, he has to say it. So which one is it?
No, I'm quoting you. You said that God's the authority. I'm quoting you. I'm saying that.
See, all of what he just said is nothing. It's what I call woman poetry, even though he's a man. It's just a whole bunch of figurative words and abstract examples, but he doesn't actually. He's not exactly saying anything.
Just because some Hindu person.
I'm saying that the people who create.
And I'll point out too that this is a big problem with him, and with him as well. And I mean, it's not my platform. It's your platform. But again, aside from the couple of little outbursts I had with Freshly here, I think that I go out of my way to respect your platform. Okay? So that's why, when I'm engaging with you on a topic, which we don't do very much on stream, but when I'm engaging with you on a topic, if you go to say something, then, I shut up and listen to what you have to say. Even if I have y'all muted and I'm talking on my chat and I hear y'all say something, I want to comment on it. I typically don't just unmute and just go to talking. I'll unmute and I'll be like, Vulcan. I'll try to get your attention. Vulcan, that kind of thing. I don't just start just barge right in the middle of it. Both of these guys do. And just from my perspective, different people consider different things respectful or disrespectful. My brother raised 3 kids. His 3 kids would refer to him as brah and homie and dude. They would talk to him like they were peers. See, with my kids, I had a lot of fun with my kids. I enjoyed raising my kids. I was an extremely hands-on dad, So I love my kids, and we had a decent relationship, me and my kids, but that's just something that didn't happen in my house. My kids wouldn't call me bruh, dude, or homie, or fella, or guy, or Nope. So, because to me, it was just, I'm in a different office. I'm the father. So, we can have a close, personal, a very warm, loving relationship, but I ain't your buddy. I ain't your pal. I ain't your friend. I ain't your brah. I ain't your bro. I ain't your dude. I consider that very disrespectful. My brother didn't consider it disrespectful. In the great scheme of things, does letting your child refer to you as homie? If you let your child refer to you as homie, does that have any effect on whether or not she'll end up dancing on a pole one day? I don't think so. Probably not. So, it's in the great scheme of things, that may not have been that big of a deal. But for me, I don't know, looks like my logo's a little off center or something. Anyway, but for me, no, my kid ain't calling me. My kid's not going to interact with me and call me by words that my peers, my friends who are closer to my age and grown adults, and even if it's kids that are adults that are a good bit younger than me, I didn't, I ain't never had their shit on me. I ain't never had them puke on me. I didn't teach them to walk. So, they might get away with calling me, friendlier and more relaxed, less formal names. But my own child, no, they ain't gonna call me buddy or dude or none of that kind of bull crap. Anyway, so different people consider different things disrespectful or not disrespectful. So you may not think that that's disrespectful. I do. So that's part of it right there, is as you're trying to engage with him, he's trying to assert a certain level of authority and control in the situation that I honestly don't think that he has, that he should have. Because I mean, it's like when I play around with my kids sometimes, we joke and tease back and forth, and they cross that line where they want to joke and tease with me like they do their actual peers. And I'd have to remind them, hey, we're going to have fun and everything. But I'm never not your daddy. So, and that comes with good and bad. So, we can laugh and play, and I enjoy it. We can have a good time. Don't say that to me. Nope. No, I'll reach all the way back to last week and knock you the hell out. So even though he's engaging with you back and forth in an argument, he still needs to remember that he's a guest on your podcast. Now, someone who was not genuinely interested in having a good faith conversation, I'm going to turn that live chat off a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Someone who's really not interested in having a good faith conversation in your position could use their position as the owner of the podcast or whatever as leverage to win, which really wouldn't be winning, in a debate. Okay? So, I mean, there is that, but you don't do that. So, if anything, I think you go too far the other way. So that's what's going on right here, is he's forgetting his place, so to speak, on your podcast. All right.
The belief system is telling you what this thing over here is. If you invented
I'm saying,
well, he didn't have to say that, but over here he's saying, well, he has to say it. So which one is it?
No, I'm quoting you. You said that God's the authority. I'm quoting you. I'm saying that just because some Hindu person,
I'm saying that the people who created the belief.
You see how I just interrupted you. I rewinded a little bit how I just interrupted you. And those hand motions in the camera, T-Reason does it too. Those hand motions, that body language is used for like aggression purposes. It's intended to be kind of intimidating. It's just a different version of pointing your finger at somebody when you're debating with them, arguing with them, having some sort of conflict, whether it's an actual hostile conflict or whether it's an intellectual sort of debate. Those kind of things. That's like it's an exertion of it's aggression is what it is, not necessarily nefarious, but that's why he's doing that. It's because he's thinking that you're not getting his point, but you're getting his point. It's just wrong. But when you're not agreeing with his point, then he's thinking that you don't understand his point. So then he's trying to exert more power, influence, or whatever. And he does the same thing. That's why I start making fun of him when he's doing this at the camera as he's talking like that. Some women, I see a lot of black women do it, but white women have started doing it too. When they want to start arguing, they want to start clapping on every word. It's the same thing. It's the same thing, and that's what he's doing right there.
Belief system is telling you what this thing over here is. If you invented the microphone and you said the microphone is for talking into, who am I to say no? It ain't.
Let me ask you this question then.
He's saying that regardless of
the originator or the creator be wrong about something about the creation? Can the creator get something wrong about the creation?
No.
And I would point out, too, the failure of his analogy with his microphone. And like he asked, I don't know if it was before this or right after this, who better would know about, something like Hinduism than the people who invented it? I would ask him who invented Hinduism. He doesn't know. It's the same thing as when he was talking about more eyes need to be on the Nolan Wells investigation, but he doesn't know how many eyes have been on it. So he doesn't have any idea of how many eyes should be on it. It's just that it sounds good and gives him a positive emotional response to say there needs to be more eyes, but he doesn't have any idea how many have been or should be, or how many sets of eyeballs are we short? Like, how many sets of eyeballs do we need to get on the investigation to go with the ones who've already been there to meet your threshold of enough? Doesn't know. He hadn't thought that far. It pops in their mind and they say it. And it popped in this guy's mind right here. Who best would know than the people who invented it? So I would explore that, because his underlying presupposition there is that Hinduism was invented. Hinduism was designed, it was created, and that sort of stuff. So I would ask him, who invented Hinduism? He's likely would tell you some version of the Hindus did. Well, the Hindus couldn't invent Hinduism, because before they invented Hinduism, they would have been something besides Hindus. So who invented Hinduism? The reality is Hinduism evolved through millennia. Some aspects of Hinduism was imposed on the people of India by the Aryans, the same people who came and established the caste system in India. Now, he don't know all of that because I guess he's not very well educated in it, but that's just the historical fact. No one really knows where Hinduism itself originated other than in the subcontinent somewhere in India. That's how ancient Hinduism is, But this is the analogy he's appealed to, yoga and Hinduism. Because all he knows is what he's read or been told on a very surface level, that yoga is a religious practice and Christians shouldn't be doing yoga because that's a part of idolatry, okay? That's just not true. See, so he knows that. He knows that yoga comes out of Hinduism and that Hinduism's a pagan religion, and that's all he needs to know. He hasn't really studied it any deeper than that, any farther than just enough to support his position. That's all. So yeah, when he said, well, who else besides those who invented it? I'd ask him who invented it. He's not going to know. And then I would explain to him that Hinduism wasn't invented, that it evolved over millennia. And then I would roll back to the argument I was saying earlier, where I would try to get him to explain why he thinks that people who practice Hinduism are inherently experts in Hinduism. You don't even have to compare it to poorly discipled Christians. There's a lot of people who are born and raised speaking English, don't do it very well. There are many people who are born and raised speaking English. They speak English very well, but they don't have any sort of a technical understanding or mastery of the different parts and pieces of the English language. See, just because I had a Spanish teacher one time from Nicaragua, I think. And so she was a native speaker, and somebody in class one time said something about, her being a native speaker, how that was good to have a Spanish teacher that was a native speaker. And she said, well, no, that's not necessarily true. That's something that a lot of people think, but it's not true. She said, because just because you can speak a language doesn't mean you can teach a language. So in that regard, this right here, who else to know besides those who invented it? I'll say those who practice it. See, it doesn't follow. That's a non sequitur, that because you practice a religion, that you have a mastery of everything that religion believes and all of the different aspects and facets of it. You see what I'm saying? So that's what I would respond to with that. Well, who is the authority? Well, he wants you to give him an individual one thing that's an authority. And like what when you say, well, I like what you said earlier, when you said that God is the authority, well, then the question there is, well, how do you know what God said? Well, we have the Word, we have the Bible. Where did the Bible come from? The Bible hasn't always existed. So when you appeal to the written Word, you're actually appealing to the opinions of the bishops and cardinals and stuff that canonized the Bible centuries ago. So how do you know they were right? You see, and we can just continue going down that rabbit hole to answer the question of, well, who's the authority? But in the podcast, if your goal is to teach logic and critical thinking and reasoning skills and communication and debate skills and that sort of stuff, well, then what I would say is, well, who's the authority? I would say there is no one single absolute authority when you get down to it on a theoretical level. We have God's word, we have church history, we have philosophy, we have world history, we have literature, we have all of these humanities. So when we approach Scripture, there is no one authority. I mean, if God appears to you like he did Moses, you know, if you're having to walk around in the daytime with a veil on your face so you don't blind people, because the light is just shining out from you because you've been in the presence of God, he has spoken to you like he did Noah. Noah. What? That's an old Bill Cosby joke. Anyway, so like that, well, of course, I mean, if God appears to you, but then you have to ask the question, how would you know it was God? And how would you know it was not some demon manifesting himself to you as God? I mean, you could just keep going down those epistemological questions. You see, and so, I mean, it just occurred to me that that's what you're dealing with right here is an epistemological question. And this guy right here, probably I would be shocked if he knew what epistemology was. But this guy right here thinks that he seems to think that he has arrived at the top of the epistemological mountain. So that's part of what you're dealing with right here. No matter what you try to throw at him logically, he knows you're wrong because you're countering him, and that's all it takes. That's all it takes. But who is the authority? Well, we don't really have the authority here with us. The Ark of the Covenant ain't nowhere to be found. But we do have these evidences. We have Scripture. The heavens declare the glory of God. The firmament showeth forth his handiwork. We have nature and science and reality around us. We have the metaphysicals, honor and duty and love and these sorts of things that we know exist but are not physically tangible. We have these things. So we can sit down, you know, come away and reason with me for a while. How now then shall we live? These sorts of things. We can sit down as reasonable, intelligent, thinking men who all have a goal of reaching an agreement of what is true. And we can sit down and use the tools of logic and reason, and we can look at this evidence, and we can parse through this and arrive at least a consensus, understanding that even when we reach that consensus, we could still be wrong. I mean, Scripture does say that we see through a glass darkly. So, you know, those sorts of things. But so who is the authority? I don't suppose that there is one absolute authority. We could say in a religious aspect exactly what you said, well, God is the authority. But then you still have to parse out what God has said. So on the earthly realm, who is the authority? This question is one thing that has me looking seriously at Catholicism, because there is an episcopal form of government over there. Whereas us Protestants down here, especially us lower Protestants, everybody is the authority. The priesthood of the believer, we're all priests. We all got the same authority to hear from God and to know what God said and to decide how God wants us to live. So we're basically all little demigods running around. We can read Scripture. We can read what God said, and whatever we understand that to mean about God, that's what it means, and that's the truth. You see. At any rate,
then that's
now a person can.
You gotta admit that's kind of crazy.
No, the Creator can't be wrong about the creation. No.
So people who have created things all the
by
time.
By definition, you're saying the Father is wrong about His creation.
You see how he keeps just talking over you? I don't know. I think he's just talking over you because he thinks he's the man. He think he knows some stuff, and he, you know, he gonna talk. He gonna say what he want to say. I think that's what it is. But if I don't assume maliciousness or nefariousness or whatever. It may be I don't know why they out there barking. I don't know if y'all can hear them, but I don't know why they barking. Ain't nobody here. I swear. Trying to make my video and they got me impersonating T Reason. I will be right back. Is it possible for your dogs to be pranking you? That's what I want. Is it possible for your dogs to be pranking you? Are they that smart? I mean, boxers are pretty smart. They look goofy. Boxers are pretty smart, but is it possible? I'm thinking for a minute they just out there conspiring against me. They go, hey, you bark this time. We're going to get that fat bastard out here watching. So I get up and I go out there because I think maybe there was a raccoon or something on the back porch. Something, maybe that's what it is. We do have one that keeps coming up eating our cat food. Okay, these are yard cats. These are farm cats. Okay, they keep the mice and the rats and that kind of stuff. But damn, okay, I ain't no cat owner. I ain't got no pet cats. All right, I ain't gay. I don't think I am. I'm pretty sure I never really thought about it. I hope not, because if I'm gay, it's really gonna change a lot. But anyway, so the raccoon in the back porch. I thought maybe that was it. I go out there and they're barking out my French door. They're looking at me, and I say, okay, well maybe there is a coon out there. I can't see him, because I am a redneck, so I got a bunch of stuff on my back porch that's not patio furniture. So I'm like. So I open the door and they run out there like they run off to chase some. I'm on 5 acres. So they run out there and they get, I don't know, ways out there, but they run like they're chasing something. And they all 3 stop at once and they're looking around different directions like, where'd he go, where'd he go? I swear, there ain't nothing out there. Everything. And then they stand there looking confused for a little while. I call them back in the house. They run back in the house. I think they're pranking me. They're pranking me. The dogs think that's funny. It's all right. Anyway, I forgot where I was at.
So you're saying that when somebody creates something, whatever, a computer, whatever it is, they are infallible when they speak on that topic.
Yeah.
So what I want to say is that
I think when Steve Jobs made whatever computer or when Steve Jobs made whatever electronic device,
See, that's the problem. See, that's an example. He doesn't know or understand. The iPhone is a great example. The iMac is a great example. He doesn't understand. Chances are he's never really produced anything tangible in his life. So he probably doesn't understand that when Steve Jobs produced the iPhone or the iMac or whatever, that was a team effort of a whole bunch of people. He's probably never managed a business or any kind of a construction project or anything like that. So he probably doesn't understand that good leadership, who's the universally best leader, that would be God, right? The good part of good leadership is being able to delegate out authority. And of course, with God, that would be the priest, the pastors, the bishops, the cardinals, all these people. God delegated authority to Moses. You see, now God's omniscient. We're not omniscient. But so Moses didn't do something that God wouldn't have already known about, right? But that notwithstanding, he doesn't understand. Well, do you think that Steve Jobs, when he produced a computer or whatever he produced, that he didn't... Steve Jobs was a businessman. Steve Jobs was not sitting down at his desk engineering out everything to do with an iMac or a MacBook or an iPhone and all of that sort of stuff. So his analogy is horrible, but you could use his analogy and you could turn that analogy back on him, because he has one image, and that's why he thinks his analogy works so well. But you could flank around the side and explore his analogy. You wouldn't be able to, because he'd just talk over you, and then he'd change his analogy, and he'd hopscotch over to something else. This dude right here does the same thing. And I wish there was something we could not about him, because I don't think you ever get him there from here. But I wish there was some way with this dude here that we could get him to shut his pie hole a little bit and give the other person, whether it's me, whether it's you, even Wicked, to get him to shut up and actually listen when we're trying to drill down into his claims and drill down into his arguments so that he could learn how to be a little better of a logician, you see. But, so if you try to flank this guy and explain to him that, okay, let's look at Steve Jobs, let's look at your analogy. And we went through explaining to him that there were all sorts of things that Steve Jobs doesn't know about the computer or the iPhone. Because especially as big as Apple is, there's no way that Steve Jobs is sitting in his office and he knows everything there is to know about every aspect of that corporation or every aspect of that iPhone. He doesn't understand that the smartest leaders recruit the smartest people in their fields and assembles them into a team to where they don't have to be an engineer. They don't have to be a software designer. They don't have to be a graphic artist. They don't have to be a marketer. But they recruit those best people and they delegate those jobs to those people. You see? So I would have addressed that. But when you do that, you're getting down more into the underpinnings, the philosophies, and the theories of what we know as reality.
Made it for a specific purpose. Now, somebody trying to use it outside of that purpose, do they have the will to do so? Yes. Does that mean that that's the accurate way to do it? Does that mean it's going to last as long as they want? Or are they going to void their warranty when they do it? Probably so, but they can do it. But he had a specific purpose, a specific way. That's how he was able to stand on the stage and say, this button does this, this does that, because he knew exactly what he was trying to do.
Real quick,
sorry, go ahead, Freshly.
Because I want to make sure that Vulcan, you can go ahead and say what you want to say. I want to make sure King David gets in and he has something to say.
Yeah. So you want something to say? You got something you want to say, King David?
No, I'm listening, bro. I want you to make it.
Yeah. So to me, there's two things here. Maybe a point of agreement. It's very likely that the person who creates something knows the most about it. But I think that it would be absurd to think that a human creator would have absolute knowledge about anything they create.
So that the Hindus that decided to do.
So you basically ended up, I didn't remember you saying it, you basically ended up saying the same thing to him that I would have said when I delved into everything about Steve Jobs and about Steve Jobs doesn't know everything about about the iPhone and whatever. But I just think it would have been more effective if you would have said that within the context of his analogy. Again, back to the jiu-jitsu, even Aikido, if you consider Aikido an actual martial art. I think it's more like old men dancing. I don't know. But even Aikido, it's about using your opponent's body weight against them. So he picked the analogy of Steve Jobs and the iPhone. So what I would have done, again, was flanked him and used I would have communicated the same thing you just communicated, but I would have done it within the context of his analogy. I just think that would go a lot farther, would make more sense to him. It wouldn't convince him because the guy, I don't think his mind is open to being convinced. Like I said to you a few days ago, that my mind can be changed, but it's going to take more than someone just telling me their opinion or trying to use social shame or social pressure to change my mind or to get me to behave in a certain way. Like they're going to have to come actually engage with me. They're going to have to defeat my argument in order to convince me. So a lot of people are convinced that I'm like this guy in that way, that I'm just not open to being convinced I'm right, you're wrong. I'm here to point out to you that you're wrong, and that's the only option. No, I'm here to engage with you because I think you're wrong, and I'm going to set about proving that you're wrong. But if I'm wrong, I want you to do the same to me. like iron sharpens iron, one man sharpens another. I don't think this dude has any real interest. I think that he thinks that he's here to straighten us out.
Certain movements and make certain faces so they will.
Oh, over.
So that the Hindus that decided to do certain movements and make certain faces so they will relate to certain Hindu gods. Their knowledge base, their everything.
Okay. I would have flanked him right there.
To do certain movements and make certain faces.
Here's the important part. Here's the nugget. So here's why I'd flank him.
So they will relate to certain Hindu gods.
So they will relate to certain Hindu gods. I would have flanked him on that and explored that and drilled down to that. If I'm doing yoga, and I've actually thought about doing yoga, just because I'm old, I'm getting stiff, and yoga's supposed to be good for that. I've seen videos of old fat guys that were literally on walking canes and walkers that were able to recover their flexibility and mobility through yoga. I've actually considered doing that. I used to actually share a lot of what he believes about yoga. I've argued with people in church before that yoga has Far Eastern mystical roots and blah, blah, blah. We didn't do Santa Claus with my kids. We didn't have Christmas trees until my kids were on up in age for the same reasons that he had, that he's exhibiting. But anyway, I digress. I would have explored that for the same reasons. So if I can get physical therapy to help my mobility, help me be healthier by using the same motions and stretches and such as the Hindus did in yoga, but I'm not doing it to connect to their gods or to imitate their gods or to commune with their gods. I'm doing it for health reasons. Then how does me doing it for health reasons connect to what he says the Hindus are doing when they do it for religious connection to their gods? And as he continued defending that, part of it you're dealing with someone who's not very educated. I would ask him if he's familiar with the experiments that the Japanese performed on prisoners of war during World War II, where they did things like cut the heart out of living, awake prisoners of war because there were so many things that they could not learn about the function of a heart unless the heart was actually beating. So they ended up torturing these POWs. This is just one example. The Germans did a lot of this stuff too, where they sawed open these POWs' chest to be able to study the heart as it was working. And then after World War II, all of that data was brought over to the West and was the foundation of much of our cardiac treatment today. So according to him, like my sister-in-law has an artificial valve installed in her heart. She ain't that old either, it's a birth defect. Installed in her heart. If you sit next to her and you're quiet, you can hear this little metal valve in there. It sounds like a watch ticking, tick, 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 tick. Without the foundations of the Japanese sawing open prisoner of war's chest and all of that horror and barbarism, she likely wouldn't have that artificial valve on her heart. I don't know, but that's reasonable to say. So then I would pose to him, if what you say is true and the foundations of an act taint the act and every act that grows out from it because it's rooted in something evil, then it would follow that my sister-in-law receiving that heart surgery that saved her life would also be sinful. So every time my sister-in-law's heart beats, she's committing a sin because she's doing something for medical therapeutic purposes that benefited off of a sin. Do you see what I'm saying? I would explore that with him.
Their knowledge base, their everything is invalid.
No. Again, remember what I'm saying. What I'm saying, it's reasonable to suggest that they have maybe the most knowledge about it, right? But they wouldn't have infallible knowledge about what they created. Because you got to think, anytime you create something, whether you create
Yeah,
a
I can't
or you create a
vibe with that.
computer, or you create a human being, whatever you might create on this earth.
See, you'll see me do this on debates a lot of times. Usually we just do right here. When they make these statements, and this is kind of like that's your opinion that you said earlier, no offense, but that was bad. But, when they'll just make the statement, well, I disagree. Or as this guy said it, well, I can't vibe with that. And you hear me respond to that by saying, it doesn't matter if you vibe with it. You see, I think that's something that him and some other people that have been on the panel, they don't seem to concede in their mind. Is that it doesn't matter if you can vibe with it. It doesn't matter if you agree with it. It doesn't matter if it's an opinion or if that's your opinion or anything else. What matters is, at least in this context, is what you can objectively demonstrate and prove and defend. So when he says, well, I can't vibe with that, well, that's cool. If you could vibe with it, then we wouldn't be having this debate because we would be in agreement. But we are having this debate. And so I'm giving you evidence. I'm giving you logical arguments to support why I'm correct and you're wrong. And what you need to do is do the same thing to defend your position, because I can't vibe with that. What he's actually saying is he's going to believe whatever he can believe, he wants to believe, whether he can logically defend it or not.
There are an infinite amount of sciences that go into that whole thing. There's no way that person could know all that information. If you ask who makes a toaster,
you're talking about the Father, though. You're talking about the Father.
His point is he's not talking about the Father.
You said the Hindu. This is not what the Hindu stuff is.
Yeah, the people that made the thing, they knew what they was making it for.
Again,
everybody that makes something know what they're making it for. If the people that made it is telling you this what this is for, who else? So let me ask you this then. If the people that made it don't know what it's for, who does?
Oh, but again, I'm not discussing whether they know what it's made for. You and I, again, we agree on that, brother. They do know what it's for because they created. That's not our point of contention. Remember, what I'm saying is a very extreme thing. That's why I'm sure if you hear it, you're not going to agree with it once you hear what you're saying. You're saying that the people, because they created yoga, they know everything about it.
They know why they made it. That's all that matters.
But they don't know why they made it. Again, it's his yoga Hinduism analogy is just fair. No one invented it. That's like these feminists. When you try to engage with feminists and you say something about the fact that feminists are not required to be drafted. They're not required to be drafted and go off and risk dying to defend the country, but men are. So that's evidence that men and women are not equal, and that's evidence that women don't even want to be equal. That women want, when women want to be equal, when the air conditioner is involved. That's true. So, when women say, well, we're equal to men, blah, 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 well, then why don't y'all go sign up for the draft? See, like that. Oh, no, well, it's about having a choice. Well, I don't have a choice. You're telling me I am a slave. The government owns my body if they need it, but they don't own your body? Kind of funny. Blind man can see that don't make sense and everything. Well, it's, anyway, I forgot where I was going with that.
I agree with it once you hear what you're saying.
It'll come back to me.
You're saying that the people, because they created yoga, they know everything.
Oh, yeah, that's it. Yeah, they created yoga. I see. It's, I'm old. Anyway, so yeah, it's the people who created it, those feminists, they'll come out with that. Well, who set up that system? Well, who created that system? And they think that's a win because, the patriarchy established civilization. But just like the issue of who created it, things like the Western civilization, the way our culture works, where men are the leaders, no one sat down in a committee meeting and said, how are we going to set up civilization, right? So you had like human beings barely surviving gathering together as families, hoping a saber-toothed tiger didn't come eat them or something. And then they just slowly through a process began to say, we gotta find a better way to live. So they develop better housing and better, hunting and gathering. Well, these plants out here, they're growing. And so we know what seasons to go where to gather what berries and stuff. So, I wonder what if instead of all this traveling, we plowed up some dirt and let's see if we can get these blueberries to grow right here by our house so we don't have to wander. And these animals, we know when we see a certain thicket of plants over there that there's going to be likely a certain kind of animal in those plants. So we've learned what they eat. So what if we plant some of what they eat closer to the house? That way we ain't got to do all this walking around, putting the tent up, taking the tent down, following the buffalo herd. What if I got an idea now. What if we put a fence up around that feed plot? See, that way they can't leave, and everybody knows how babies made. So what if we get us one of these animals with the pee-pee and one of these animals with the hoo-ha, and we'll just get babies out of them. We ain't got to worry about them just wandering up where we can knock them in the head. And so we developed agriculture. But who's better physically suited for doing agriculture? Men are. We have the upper body strength. We have the physical endurance for the elements. So in the civilization developed through this very long, extenuating process, extended process. He don't think that deep. He's not that educated on world history, world civilization, anthropology, biology, these sorts of things. So when he says more than the people who created it or invented it, no one created Hinduism. No, it's a religion, the best scholars can tell, that evolved over millennia, a long time. Buddhism is to Hinduism what Protestantism is to Catholicism. So Buddhism, as ancient as Buddhism is, the first Buddha, Siddhartha was his name, the first Buddha was a Hindu prince, a Hindu prince. Supposedly went out to the wilderness, solidarity, communed, meditated, all kind of stuff. And somehow or another, the focus of Hinduism is to reach Satori. Which means that you've expunged yourself of all of your negative karma. So you reach a state of Satori, which means that you have escaped the wheel of samsara, which is that reincarnation cycle. And then your Atman, which is the part of the Brahman that is you, is then rejoined to the Brahman, which is there. The Brahman can't really be called a god because you get into a lot of stuff that's really outside of the bounds of this video. But the person is supposed to just be basically annihilated. Anyway, so that whole system developed over, we don't even know how long, but it was not invented. So his argument to defend his position is based on a false premise, because he presupposes that like Jesus came and preached to the disciples, or like God called Abraham out, leave your people, hit the road, Jack, don't look back, that kind of stuff. That's his concept of religion. So he's presupposing that Hinduism is that same way. So his presupposition to defend his premise is faulty. I would explore that.
Everything about it.
They know why they made it. That's all that matters.
See, they don't know why they made it. Now, your technique is different than mine because your goal is different than mine. But if I was right down here and he said that to me, well, they know why they made it. I would say, well, why is that? Why did they make it? They know why they make it. Who knows why they made it? Well, they do. Who is they? You see what I'm saying? What the Hindus do? Well, they couldn't have been Hindus before they made it. The Hindus didn't make Hinduism. That don't work. You know, Hindus couldn't have made Hinduism. It had to be someone who was not a Hindu. If Hinduism was made, it wasn't. If Hinduism was made, then the person making or the group of people making Hinduism would have had to have begun as something other than a Hindu. They could have been a Hindu if Hinduism didn't exist. So who were they? He doesn't know.
That has to do with
and this may be a little pedantic, but then I would point out to him that if you don't know who made Hinduism, then how can you say that the people who made Hinduism knew what they were making? They didn't. Again, it was this long evolution of philosophy, Far Eastern philosophies, and it just sort of coagulated, best we can tell. I mean, people who dedicate their whole life to this kind of study when it comes to Hinduism, they don't really know. Not like we know where Christianity came from. We know where Judaism came from. We know where Islam came from. You say, we know the history of Hinduism? No. It's something that just kind of dynamically coagulated around. And then those religious beliefs that were existed, when the Aryans came down and conquered India, they invented the caste system, which is what people are trying to do in the West right now. The Marxists are, by separating people into different castes, social castes, racial castes, and that sort of stuff. Why? Because it made the natives of India easier to govern for the Aryans, who were the elitist rulers in India at the time. And that is why there's such a confusion and an argument about whether or not people like Indians and such are white or not. I hold that they are. Indians are white. If you believe in that kind of stuff, Indians are white, Arabs are white, Persians are white. But that's I digress. So anyway, I would challenge him on that. And when I establish, just like I'll try to do with T Reason here in his, we need more eyes on the investigation. Well, how many eyes have been on it? You don't know. And if you don't know how many eyes have been on it, there's no way you can claim that there haven't been enough. How many would be enough? You don't know that either. So if that's the case, then no matter how many eyes have been on the investigation, it will never be enough as far as you know, because you don't know what enough is. You don't know how many have been. You don't know how many would be enough. So what do you mean? How can you then say there needs to be more eyes on it? Same thing with him. Who would know more than the people who invented it? Well, who invented it? I don't know. Then how do you know there was an inventor? Because there wasn't. How do you know there was an inventor? You see what I'm saying? And if you don't know that there was an inventor, then you can't know what the inventor that doesn't exist or that you don't know exists. If you don't know he existed, then you can't say that he knew anything. But to get that, you got to kind of flank them and get into like the supporting structures.
Proportionism. There's so many sciences that go into any one thing. There's no way you could believe a human being.
They know why they made it. That's all that matters. Okay, they know why.
Hear that closed-mindedness? That's all that matters. It's not all that matters. All that matters is truth. You know, I am the way, the truth, and the life. That's what matters, is the truth. Do you see what I'm saying? So that's not all that matters. You know, they know why they made it. That's all that matters. No, there's a whole bunch underpinning there that needs to be addressed and either supported or torn down, because moving towards the truth is actually all that matters. You know, that means that He needs the structures holding up his failed worldview ripped out from underneath him, pried from his little fingers, in order to move towards the truth. Then that's what matters. It doesn't, they know why they made it, that's all that matters. No, it isn't. That's not all that matters. I mean, you just keep repeating the claim, doesn't make it true.
They know what the intention was. If I say I'm gonna do this move and this move represents a certain Hindu god, I know why I made this.
That we agree on. Yes.
Now, can this mean something else in another language that I'm not aware of or something like that? Yeah, that's true. But I know why I made this.
So now you and I are on the same page. I'm saying, which I think you're saying too, they don't have absolute knowledge on what they created, but they do have knowledge, the absolute knowledge on why they did it. And that's
so if they made a certain yoga move to represent a certain pagan god, then somebody else can say, no, that's not what it's for.
And it came from them. You said they could mean something completely different.
I'm asking you, if I said I'm making this symbol and this symbol stands for all black people, and I'm the first person to ever do this. You've never seen nobody else do this before me. And I'm saying this means black people. Who says it's different? If you've never seen it nowhere else before. I'm the first person that has ever done it in life.
Again, people do that all the time. When people start gangs, people start things, they want to do something. We do this, it means this. That's not what that means.
I didn't say that. I said I'm the first to ever do it.
I know you're the first to ever do it to you. Unless you're God, you don't actually know that. You don't actually know that.
I'm not saying to me. I'm saying for all intents and purposes, for everybody's knowledge base and sake, I'm the first.
But if I grant in a hypothetical that you are the first one to do it, which I guess you're saying in this hypothetical, it's certain knowledge that you're the first one to do it.
All of this is hypothetical.
You don't own it still. This somebody bigger and badder than you, or that lives longer than you, or lives after you, can completely change what that means, and you'd have no control over it. Or you can say it means this, and everybody around you go, eh.
So I think you are.
How old is yoga?
Oversimplifying.
You see, he's trying to shift the goalpost on you now. I think that your response to him is the same response I would have given, but I would have tried to broke it down, because I believe that he is performatively trying to speak like an intelligent, educated person, how he thinks that person. I think that's why he speaks with those pauses between his words, and he's got almost a preacher kind of a emphasis to his voice, but that's just a personal evaluation. I could be wrong, but that's just what I think. So I would have tried to broke it down. The way I would have communicated that is I would have just granted to him. I said, okay, if you invent that gesture and you say that gesture means black people, you know why you invented it. You know what you intend for that gesture to do, to communicate black people. Okay. However, I need you to explain to me how your desire has any control over why I might make the gesture. For instance, let's say I do the same gesture, and I say that gesture means peanut butter. How is it that... All right, well, I guess that little thunderstorm coming through here must have knocked my power out. It just went off for just like 10 seconds, came right back on. But that was enough to shut everything down, stop my recording, irritate me a little bit. But I'm back. And I guess I'll just go into my Adobe Premiere when I get finished with this one, and I will edit them together so that y'all don't just watch one video, because I know how much you just love hearing my voice. Because I've been doing this one a lot longer than I anticipated. So let me...
But you think it's relevant. That's what we disagree.
I'm saying,
why is that playing? Quit. Okay, there we go. I don't know why that came up. Give me just a minute, y'all. Let me check something. Movie. Let me see how long that one is. It's not telling me how long it is for some reason. I don't know why. Did it not process or? Okay. Just wasn't showing me in my info pane. Yeah, okay. I had to open it up. It was a dang, almost an hour and a half in. Y'all killing me. Don't blind people because the light is just shining out from you because you've been in the presence of God. He has spoken to you like he did Noah. Noah. What? That's an old Bill Cosby joke. Anyway, so like that, well, of course. I mean, if God appears to you, but then you have to ask the question, how would you know it was God? And how would you, okay, so I'm just so proud of my OBS and my microphone and my light. Oh, I don't have my other light. My light went off. I got to looking at myself, see all of these shadows, and it's messing up my angles. Woo! There we go. A little bit better now. Hang on, let me. Oh, yeah, that's better. Dim it down a little bit. See, that's it full. See, my little. I got some presets. See how bright it is? It creates a shadow kind of across it, kind of washes me out here on my left side. It just messes up my complexion. So I kind of adjust it where all this back here gets kind of darker. The shadows are less prominent. There's a little bit of pink in there, you know. Yeah. So ring light that one of my adult daughters left when she left here. Yeah. I may get another, give me a key light up over here. See if I can't. Let me see. Whew. Now that messes up my green screen, don't it? See this right here, yeah, I know. I know it ain't worth all that, Dane. You got all that stuff. It's all that super duper good time and stuff, and your ass don't hardly stream. Well, that's what I was trying to do today when you want to send me this video to evaluate. See, turn this down a little bit. Just a little bit. See, y'all got me distracted. Maybe I can change the tone on it. Yeah, that was better. Change the color a little bit. Anyway. So y'all distracting me more. Quit distracting me. Anyway, I'll back this video up just a little bit, so let's see where it's at. I'm not getting no audio. Why ain't I getting no audio out of that video? God, dog, if my power went out, it's done discombobulated the whole world. Oh, Jesus. What am I missing here? Let me. I don't know if y'all can hear it. It may be that y'all can hear the audio and I can't, but I don't know. Let me see. One. We can't be doing that. Nope, we can't be doing that either. All right, so that's right.
Again,
who else will better know than the people that made it?
Ain't nothing really changed. I clicked a few buttons to check some things, and it did exactly what I thought it was going to do. It did that like that. And then I turned it back off. Now it's working. I wish these people would quit trying to screw up my life.
That's called appeal to authority fallacy. Again, that's what I'm saying. You don't
We done
realize.
been here.
So who's
God
over here? He's saying that the people who created the beliefs and
you answer this question then.
He's saying that regardless of
a person can.
You gotta admit that's kind of crazy.
No.
Wrong about the creation.
He's not never going to admit nothing. I would say that occasionally this dude right here will sometimes, it's like pulling eye teeth, he will kind of concede sometimes. A lot of times his concession is when he just shuts up. He gets a certain deer in the headlight look and he just shuts up. And I'm like, cha-ching, that's a concession. This dude right here,
No.
Then that's
now a person
that's,
can.
you gotta admit that's kind of crazy.
No, the creator can't be wrong by the creation. No.
So people who have created things all the
By
time.
definition, you're saying the Father is wrong about his creation.
See, he's missing the kind of the poetic, sort of philosophical angle that you're going at. The creator can't be owned by his creation. I don't know how many things he's ever created in his life. He brought up Steve Jobs. He's probably hasn't done a whole bunch of research into the life and times of Steve Jobs, especially research that includes people who knew him personally and knew him closely professionally. But Steve Jobs' whole world revolved around business and tech. You know, that's what it revolved around. That's part of the tragic story that his whole life was dedicated to Apple and Mac and business, and he was extremely successful in that. And then, relatively young in life, comes down with, pancreatic cancer or something, and dies. Goes to an early grave, so to speak. So, and a lot of people make that mistake because they're, another phrase, married to their job, that would be a way that you kind of flank his claim that the creator can't be owned by the creation. But yes, you know, Steve Jobs, he had responsibilities in trillions of dollars. You know, it's been said before in the past, I don't know if it's still the case, but I know that just not too long ago, that it was said that Apple had more money than the U.S. Treasury. You don't sit at the top of an organization like that and have a personal life or have, you know, family time and that sort of stuff. Apple's first computer was called the Lisa. Okay? It was called the Lisa. Look here. I'm going to move the mic over here a little bit. No, I forget it. I got a little bit of a sore on my lip. That is not herpes. I ain't gay. I don't care what nobody says. No. My lips, for some reason, last week, they got real dry and chapped. And I don't know. It was just, they got real dry and chapped. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I wasn't kissing no ugly women or nothing. And they got real dry. They cracked a lot. And I was piling. We have this lip balm stuff that a friend of ours makes out of like beeswax. You know, he's a beekeeper. And it's usually real good, man. I had to, and eventually, you know, it passed or whatever, but, you know, your lips crack and stuff. So don't be looking at this little spot on my lip talking about, oh, Dane got the herpes. I ain't got no herpes, man. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Anyway. What point was I going to make? Let me back up here.
The creator can't be wrong about the creation.
Oh, yeah. Create can't be wrong about creation. Yes, he can. Steve, Apple's first computer was called the Lisa. Lisa was his daughter that he didn't raise. He wasn't able to raise her. Why? He was busy over there at Apple. Apple basically owned him. This is very common in high-level businessmen. Doesn't even have to be high-level businessmen. You can be middle management, and your job demands a lot of travel. I mean, it's a common knowledge that people who are employees, people who are employable, not me, people who are employable spend more time with their coworkers than they do their own family. Because that job basically owns them, because if you don't go to work, you don't get paid. You don't get paid, you don't eat. So they're owned by that job. So how much more is that the case for guys like Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates? You see, these men who have created these massive companies. Steve Jobs didn't create Apple Mac, but might as well have. These people who well, I guess in a way he did. That's another rabbit hole. So these men who created these things, they're certainly owned by their creation. Yeah. I got a pile of projects I need to do on my house. My house has been in the state of renovation since about 2018, 2019, maybe 2020, somewhere around in there. Yeah. Now, I didn't create this house, but I mean, a lot of people build their own house. So if I had built this own house, my spare time is taken up by and large right now trying to get these projects done around this house. You know yourself, James. I was on the phone with you the other night, sitting out there in my garage, working on my garage door. I'd much rather been in the air conditioner, but I was out there working on my garage door because my creation, you could say, had I built this house, my creation owns me. So, I don't know. But I would have flanked him there. That would not in itself defeat his whole argument about, paganism and pagan practices in the church. But it wouldn't win that war, but it would have defeated that battle.
So people who
sometimes it's a matter of death by many pinpricks. Yeah.
created things all the
By
time.
definition, you're saying the Father is wrong about his creation.
So you're saying that when somebody creates something, a computer, whatever it is, they are infallible when they speak on that topic.
Yeah.
So what I want to
See, I would have paused there, and I know it's easy for me to sit here with my pause button and my rewind button, and I'm not in the heat of the battle. I'll do the same thing too. So what I'm saying here, I'm not saying you should have done different, nanny boo boo, because I know when you're in the mix, sometimes you're not thinking as clearly as you are when you look back at it.
You're saying that when somebody creates something, a computer, whatever it is.
But I would have liked, if I were in this position, if I were in your position, and I was rewatching it and I saw this, I would think, man, I should have done this.
Are infallible when they speak on that topic.
Yeah.
So what I want to say.
I didn't back up far
You
enough.
can't be wrong about the creation. No.
So people who have created things all the
By
time.
definition, you're saying the Father is wrong about his creation.
See, within the guardrails of what I understand your hope and desire to be able to do with this podcast, when he said that,
The creator can't be wrong about the creation. No.
So people
Here
who
it
create
comes.
things all the
By
time.
definition, you're saying the Father is wrong about his creation.
see that right there is a straw man. See, so right there, instead of continuing to make my point, which he's not going to receive anyway, it would have been great if you would have, like, when he said that, by definition, you're saying that this. See, if you'd have been able to hit pause in your mind for a minute and called out that straw man, not necessarily because you would have convinced him or it would have advanced your cause against his position, but other people on the panel, this dude right here, mainly. I don't know him very well. I hadn't been on but a few times with him. But more than that, people in the chat and people who will eventually come by and watch this video again, it would be a teaching moment for those people. You'd just be saying it to him. But if you would have paused right there and said, that's a straw man of my argument, maybe even ask him, can you still man my argument? Because if you think that's my argument, then you don't understand my argument, you see. And in that way, you're teaching the terms and the techniques of logic and debate and critical thinking to people on the panel who are very weak in that area. You know what I'm talking about. And people in the chat. And maybe even him, maybe kind of like the Colorado River creating the Grand Canyon. It may take like thousands and thousands of years. But anyway.
So you're saying that when somebody creates something, a computer, whatever it is, they are infallible when they speak on that topic.
Yeah.
So what I want to say is that.
Yeah. I think when Steve Jobs made whatever computer or when Steve Jobs made whatever electronic device, he made it for a specific purpose. Now, somebody trying to use it outside of that purpose, do they?
See, again, he just doesn't understand project management, entrepreneurship, innovation. He doesn't understand that Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, and them were and are like the big idea men. They come up with a big idea. The story, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've heard it a million times. The story is that Henry Ford, in his drive to make cars better, more dependable, and more affordable, he gave like a certain, I think it was a certain length that he wanted a 8-cylinder motor to fit in. And he gave his engineers a deadline. I forget all the details, a deadline. And when the deadline started coming, he was like, where's the 8-cylinder motor that's this size? And they said, it can't be done. It's impossible. There's no way to do it, blah, blah, blah. And I think it was like 6 months they had to do it. And said it was like, it's impossible. Yeah, it's impossible. Are you certain? Yeah, it's impossible. He said, well, since it's impossible, I'll give you 6 more months. And in doing that, they ended up, what they did to get it to fit into that size of a space was, instead of it being 8 cylinders like this, is that they did it like this, and then they were able to hook it up to a crankshaft like this. So they were able to scrunch it down, you see, and that was how they came up with the V8 motor. Now, is that a true story? I don't know. But I'm saying the point is there. Well, the point of that story is basically that if you say something's impossible, then you're just not thinking big enough. You're not thinking broad enough, and that sort of stuff. My logo's bothering me. I don't know. Yeah, that's better. You gotta have the Big Daddy logo. Gotta be big, Daddy. Anyway, so that's the idea. Henry Ford was the idea man. Now, old man Benz over there in Germany that invented the Mercedes-Benz, which was actually the first automobile, was the Benz. He was actually out there in his bicycle shop or whatever, his little shop in his backyard, building that car by hand. See what I'm saying? But that wasn't the case with Henry Ford, So this guy right here, he doesn't understand that the people he's talking about, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, those kind of guys, that they are the idea man. They are the ones who inspire people to work. They assemble the teams of experts because if you're an expert in all these different tech fields, whether it's engineering, like automotive engineering or airplane design, whatever, because your mind is such that you could really wrap it around this particular tech field, you're typically not going to be real good in people skills. So it's great of an engineer as you may be, or a scientist or artist or whatever, when it comes to a mind that needs to be able to assemble teams, you're likely going to be far below average in that. You see, it's your personalities and the way minds work. I know you know this, but I'm just saying, for example, this guy doesn't understand that the people that he's quoting and he's mentioning about knowing everything. No, it doesn't mean he knows everything. It means he was at the helm. He was telling the people who knew. And it's not unusual in corporations, large and small, but corporations of any size, that the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. Kind of the maestro of an orchestra. He doesn't have to be able to play every one of those instruments and know all of the theory of every one of those instruments and what they're made out of and how hard to blow for this or bow for that. He doesn't have to know all that. He's doing his job. He's conducting the experts. See, he doesn't understand that, but that's because what I'm talking about is more on the theoretical level or the philosophical, the love of knowledge, the understanding of knowledge, the movement, the massaging, the machinations of knowledge. He's just not thinking on that level.
Have the will to do so? Yes. Does that mean that that's the accurate way to do it? Does that mean it's going to last as long as they want? Are they going to void their warranty when they do it? Probably so, but they can do it. But he had a specific purpose, a specific way. That's how he was able to stand on the stage and say, this button does this, this does that, because he knew exactly what he was trying to do.
Real quick,
sorry, go ahead, Freshly.
Because I want to make sure that Vulcan, you can go ahead and say what you want to say. I want to make sure King David gets in and gets he has something to say.
Yeah. So you want something to say? You got something you want to say, King David?
No, I'm listening, bro. I want you to make it.
Yeah. So to me, there's two things here. Maybe a point of agreement. It's very likely that the person who creates something knows the most about it. But I think that it would be absurd to think that a human creator would have absolute knowledge about anything they create.
So that the Hindus that decided to do certain movements and make certain faces so they will relate to a certain Hindu.
No idea why we end up this far back, but we'll get there.
God. Their knowledge base, their everything is invalid.
No. Again, remember what I'm saying. What I'm saying, it's reasonable to suggest that they have maybe the most knowledge about it, right? But they wouldn't have infallible knowledge about what they created, because you got to think. Anytime you create something, I can't vibe with that. Or you create a human being, whatever you might create on this earth, there are an infinite amount of sciences that go into that whole thing. There's no.
I'm thinking that when I restarted my video after the power outage, yeah, that's what happened. I will fast forward. Give me just a moment.
Boy, that
they know why they made it. That's all. You know, the symbol stands for all black people, and I'm the.
Know that.
I'm not saying to me. I'm saying for all intents and purposes, for everybody's knowledge.
Ritual. It's not just a symbol.
Oh, you go, meh.
So I think you are.
How old is
that means? And you acknowledge that you're
the first all of this is hypothetical.
You don't own it still. This somebody bigger and badder than you, or that lives longer than you, or lives after you, can completely change what that means, and you'd have no control over it. Or you can say it means this, and everybody around you go, meh.
So I think you are.
How old is yoga?
Oversimplifying a practice. I believe that, and this is my conviction, Easter is a practice and a ritual. It's not just a symbol. It is a whole ritual. And based off even the word Easter, that should have never been placed in the Bible as translation instead of the word Passover. I believe Easter was instituted to get people to stop doing the Passover, which God says in His word, it should be done.
That's not true. They can't base that in church history, documented church history. I think doesn't make it true. That's not an argument. But Easter isn't actually in the Bible, but
done forever. I think that is to me one of my biggest issues.
And Easter was not instituted to get people to stop celebrating Passover. Passover is a Jewish holiday. So it wasn't instituted to get people to stop celebrating Passover. The term Easter was assigned to a day that we observe and remember the resurrection. That was done by the Catholic Church, because Constantine ordered that all of his subjects convert to Christianity. So a lot of pagans came into the church because they didn't want to die, not because they had actually repented of their sins. So they continued practicing their pagan religions. So those terms, many of them got applied to those holidays, when the Catholic Church then said, well, y'all can celebrate your fertility gods here in April with the rabbit and the egg and everything, but we're going to say that that's celebrating the resurrection of Christ. That's how Easter ended up referring to the day Jesus was resurrected. I mean, the Jehovah's Witnesses believe that celebrating any holidays is a sin. That's what they believe. So, I mean, you get to it. Well, Jesus wasn't resurrected, in April. So there's a thing that this guy right here brought up when Dusty was on panel one time about, well, if Jesus was crucified and went in the grave on Friday, then 3 days later, that's Monday, not Sunday. Okay, that's possible, but what difference does that make? They're making an implication that somehow or another the normal Christians, the mainstream Christians, are somehow or another it proves that we're wrong and they're right. I don't know. So this guy right here who's been alive, what, maybe 30 years, tops? Dusty has been alive probably, what, 40-something years? Somehow or another, they got the inside track of what's really, real and truly true in Christianity. But thousands of years of people whose entire life was dedicated to this, they were just wrong. Or they were dishonest and deceptive and had malicious, nefarious intentions. Those guys did. But he doesn't. Dusty doesn't. No, they got a pure heart, pure intentions. You see, that's basically where that comes from. So no, Easter, that he said, Easter was not instituted to get people to stop celebrating Passover.
With Easter is that people, especially people who call themselves Christian, do not participate in the Passover, and that destroys the entire link of the prophecy of the Old Testament Passover happening, which then Christ was the fulfillment of. And so I can't stand Easter for that very reason, not just because it is a ritual, it is a full practice that comes with a name, and it comes with these
it being a ritual, a full practice, it coming with a name doesn't mean anything insofar as their argument's concerned. I mean, he comes with a name. Does that mean it's okay to hate him? I mean, that doesn't make sense. Christianity itself is a ritual. It's a practice. It comes with a name. What's that mean?
These imageries that in a whole, like I said, a whole practice and a whole ritual that's being put that has nothing to do with God. When I personally, I celebrate the Passover. Now I'm aware of, in addition to the scriptures you shared, Romans, I typed it in the chat, but Romans 14.
If he's not a Jew, then he's not celebrating the Passover. He's celebrating a holiday that he believes is the same as the Passover, but he's not celebrating a Passover.
Which says some people eat, some people drink, some people don't eat, some people don't drink. Some people hold days higher than other days. But I am also aware that our God loves unity. And so I don't go around just like smacking people's hand and stuff. But people perish because of lack of knowledge.
That claim that he's aware that our God loves unity, that's not true. That comes out of some other philosophy. That some of that is a part of the feminization of the gospel, and it's some of it's rooted in liberation theology. But our God is certainly a God who believes in separating the wheat from the tares. So, like Paul, who said, to put the man out of the church who was having sex with his father's wife, that sort of stuff. No, our God is a God who loves unity. No. Unity of the body of Christ. Like if you're a believer, if you've repented of your sins, if you're sanctified or moving towards sanctification, depending on what denomination you're in, whatever, yeah, we can be unified on these things. But not unity for the sake of unity, ain't nothing in the Bible that shows that God loves unity of its own accord. Oh, well, this, at least we're unified, unity at all cost. Mm-mm.
And if people will move away from celebrating Easter and get into practicing what God said practice for that,
and that's a false dichotomy,
that time of year, I think there would be a big blessing that comes over a lot of people. It came over me, you know what I mean? And because I decided to do what God said, practice the Passover forever, and Christ fulfilled that as well. And in that, he instituted something new.
So he's practicing Judaism. I don't have a problem with I'm not, unlike this dude and and I don't know what his position is on it, I don't remember, but this dude, unlike the two of them, I don't think that that there's anything wrong with celebrating the Passover, even though that's a Jewish, custom, a Jewish a holiday. I'm not going to say what they're doing wrong, but no, if every Christian on the planet suddenly started observing Passover in the same way that Jews observe Passover, it would not move us closer to God. It would not be more pleasing to God. None of that kind of stuff. It would just mean that every Christian on the planet was observing a Jewish holiday. I mean, let's all observe, Hanukkah and Yom Kippur and all that kind of stuff. I mean,
Jewish communion, something that can be done any time of the year. But I think that Easter is a ritual and a practice, and I see many places.
You see the implication there, the innuendo he's using right there, is that because it's a ritual and a practice, that somehow or another that means it's undesirable or somehow or another inappropriate.
In the Word of God that says, "Do not practice pagan rituals." And so this is bigger than just a sign or a peace sign. To me, this is a whole thing put together that is a.
You see, it goes back to what he said earlier, for the purpose of connecting with these Hindu gods. Like, we didn't do the Easter bunny, we didn't do egg hunts and none of that kind of stuff for years and years and years and years and years. Because I was on board with this idea, but I was on board with this idea because I was religiously, spiritually immature. You see, I thought that kind of stuff meant a lot, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't. If I'm out there, hiding eggs for my kids or burning a Yule log in my fireplace to observe Easter and stuff, which is also a pagan, rooted in paganism and that sort of stuff, but I'm doing it for the purpose of celebrating the birth of Christ or the resurrection of Christ or something like that, then that is then not a pagan religion. Just like if I have some kind of heart surgery that is rooted in the barbarism of Imperial Japan, that doesn't mean that I carry the moral culpability of the barbarism.
Custom that's futile. And I look at Jeremiah 10:25. Do not learn the way of the Gentiles, for the customs of the people are futile. Why are we practicing Easter when we know that is a derivative of
this same sort of mindset is why you end up hearing people who want to try to pronounce Jesus' name in the most awkward, foreign language sounding way. His name is Yeshua. No, his name is Yahshua. No, his name is Yeshua who is Shesha. See?
Of what?
Remember, I had that interaction with this dude at one time, and he's called by my name. Okay, well, let's explore what the historical, cultural context of that by my name meant to the people who wrote it and said it and heard it. Let's explore how in my name or by my name or whatever, let's explore how in that culture that was an axiom that just meant under his authority and in recognition of who he was and so on and so forth, and not the little phonetic sounds that made out the name Jesus or Yeshua or Bill or Steve. Again, let's get into the philosophical underpinnings of that verse to understand what in my name means. They want to do that. They want to deal with that surface level, that tug of war. When I explained to him that as long as I am worshiping that Jewish carpenter who was crucified, dead, and buried, and on the third day he rose from the dead, and as long as I've repented of my sins to whatever degree I am capable of repenting to them, and I've submitted myself to the lordship of that Jewish guy who was resurrected, that it doesn't matter if I call him Larry or Harold. But called by my name, see, so I could do that tug of war back and forth with him. You see, and you just end up, nobody actually wins. I mean, he'll think he will, but nobody actually wins. Or I could flank around and I could come up from the side and I could attack those, the underpinnings of his argument. His argument being because this Bible says in my name, then that means the name does matter. Well, what does that word name mean? Let's explore that. And I'm not talking about being pedantic, getting into this little word concept fallacy thing. I'm saying let's explore what does that phrase actually mean.
But to me, that's
Ishtar. And hold on, and simultaneously not. Hold on.
You see, no respect. This dude right here, he sat there patiently forever. He tried to interrupt a couple of times, kind of like I do sometimes when I'm going Vulcan. I was like, can I say something? Can I say something? He tried to interrupt a few times, and he just kept going. So finally, Freshly kind of moderates it over to him, and he's going. And this dude, I don't know if it's just he's so excited. I don't know if it's because, he thinks that he's a superstar. I don't know if he intends to be disrespectful, but whatever it is, he thinks that what he has to say is 10,000 times more important or more useful or more worthy than what he's trying to explain. So aside from the fact this dude sat there forever, letting him talk, and then he jumping in, and when he tries to say, hang on, I was like, no, wait a minute, it's disrespectful. And I mean, I know there's some details here because I will go back and forth with somebody and talk over my arguing stuff. But that's typically when I'm already engaged with them. You see what I'm saying? And when it's not you and him, well, except for there has been a couple of times lately, we've covered that. But if I'm engaged with some random panelist and we're going back and forth, then yeah, I might talk over there. Hang on a minute. I might interrupt him and stuff. Well, yeah, to me, that's all part of it. That's the nature of the beast. But if it's somebody else is making a point, if they say something that's not true, I might just speak up and say, that's not true. That's not true. And if they recognize me and they say, well, yes, it is true, then no, that's not true. So in that regard, I interrupted them in a way, but I'm not just shouting over them. I'm not just storming in and just knocking the lamps off on the floor. Because if I speak up and say, that's not true, and you don't recognize me, CJ doesn't recognize me and move in that direction, the person speaking, one of them in the conversation doesn't defer to me, I'm just going to go on about it. I'm not going to just storm in and try to just hijack the whole discussion.
And simultaneously not doing...
You see the finger pointing? That's that body language to try to exert some sort of aggression or intimidation.
Passover, not doing Feast of Unleavened Bread, not doing Feast of Tabernacles or Feast of Booths. All these things they do forever. Most people talking have done never, but we die hard using a pun, religious about Easter.
Okay, hold on.
If you ask the average person,
so he doesn't understand why those feasts and observations were instituted, how they were all tied in. God didn't just say, do this because it makes me happy. Do this because it's all points to the Messiah, the fulfillment of the law. And that's so stuff. So when Christ came and fulfilled the law, then there was therefore no more need to do those things. Still now there's no requirement. We're not still taking live animals to the temple to be sacrificed either. You see, but they learn the surface level, and practicing those different things, I guess it gives them some sort of a sense of accomplishment or superiority or more holy or that kind of stuff and everything. So they just focus on that. Well, I keep all of these festivals and stuff. Well, that's cool. I mean, Paul said some men, it's like he said earlier, some men, they esteem one day above another. Some men esteem all days the same. It doesn't matter. So if you want to keep the Feast of the Tabernacles, you want to keep the Passover, I mean, I don't care. But that doesn't mean that you're required to. And that doesn't mean then, therefore, that you can come tell me that I'm required to. Because the law has been fulfilled, and all of that stuff is under the law.
Person that's defending Easter about the Feast of Unleavened Bread, they can't tell you what it is.
The Feast of First Fruits, which mirrors the coming of the Holy Spirit.
So my question is this: every a feast day that's in the Bible is there to symbolize something and to bring remembrance of the sacrifices that was done on our behalf and stuff like that. Where does Easter fall into play with that?
That's not true. That's close, but that's not true. The feast and the stuff that's in the Bible that they're talking about involved in Judaism were there to point the Jews back to God and to point them back to what God had done for them and their deliverance, and to point the Jews towards the expectation of the coming Messiah. You know, it's several things that those feasts are there for. You see, in the New Testament, there are no holidays ascribed to us other than if you want to consider the Eucharist. But that's not even really a holiday. You know, whenever you do this in remembrance of me. And people like this, they get in deep down into that. Do you do it every church service? Do you do it once a month? Do you do it once a quarter? When you do it, who gets to take communion? Do you have to be a member of the denomination, or do you have to be a member of the church? Or can non-Christians take the Eucharist? I mean, they just, you know, Paul talks about these discussions about, you know, unprofitable, you know, bickering and that sort of stuff, you know. But yeah, so what he just said sounds close to what I'm saying, but it's not.
You asking Vulcan?
Okay, so I wanted to address what King David just said because he spoke.
I'm asking anybody co-signing Easter.
So you spoke after King David, so I want to address King David first.
Yes, sir.
You were saying that I agree with you. You know, we should celebrate Passover, and we shouldn't be celebrating certain things that are off the mark from what the Bible is teaching us. But you made a bold claim when you said that churches don't celebrate the Passover and that nobody's doing those things.
No, I'm not saying, okay, I did speaking in absolute.
Right.
I'm celebrating it. People are celebrating it.
But you said churches don't celebrate the Passover.
Not all churches, brother. Not all churches.
Exactly. So that's my thing is I've been to many churches.
And y'all and other people probably get tired of hearing me harp on this. Okay, Dane, we get it. We done heard it. We heard it, Dane. Move along. But what he just said, this is kind of irrelevant to the actual discussion. What he just said, where he said not all churches, that is a typical feminine argument tactic too, from a feminine mind, because they think that that's an actual refutation. Well, not all men, not all women, not everybody likes that, and not everybody don't like that. Not everybody practices it. Not everybody don't practice it. You see what I'm saying? That's just you hear that a lot coming from women, and then men who have a more feminine thinking, you know, like critical thinking, you know.
And we celebrated Passover.
And the reason for that is within that feminine self-actualization in their head, they see themselves as more of a sisterhood, sort of a collective, you know, a group, sort of a hive mind kind of a thinking, you see. So whether or not all believe it or all want it, because everyone needs to be validated, everyone needs to be noticed, everyone deserves to be loved, everyone needs to be supported and feel special, and that's all wrapped up in it. So when you're involved in a debate about a point with a woman or a feminized man, when you make a claim, their register in their head, their processor in their head processes through whether or not everybody in the group agree, and if not, well, now it's untrue, because that the collective holds so much priority in their ideas of themselves and reality and morality.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so
to
T
say
Reason,
that
do you
churches
have a point beyond? But real quick, if King David acquiesces that he
he's conceding that point, and that's fine. But the other point that I want to make is the Bible clearly stated that to do so or not to do so doesn't move the goalposts for you at all. And I think that's Vulcan's point.
Please tell me that scripture.
We literally just read it.
What's
It said in scripture. It was through Corinthians, one of those Corinthians. It
It
says
was Romans 4. This one took a little
it says
Romans
doing
14.
these things.
That's one of them Corinthians. One of them Corinthians, yeah. Yeah, I really can't hate on him for that because I am quite the avid, ardent student of Scripture. Like some people would say, well, I've read the Bible front to back this many times. I can't tell you that because I never kept up with it. Maybe the first or second, third time, maybe I may have made notation of it, but I mean, this is not a flex. This is not saying, well, what I say the Bible says is what it really says because it is. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that I've studied the Bible in depth and width from Genesis to the maps so many times, I don't have any idea. I'm like one of them OnlyFans whores on whatever podcast that can't tell you what the body count is. You know, I know that's kind of weird now that I think about it. I'm correlating reading the Bible with being an OnlyFans girl, but I'm just saying that I've done it so many times, and I couldn't begin to tell you how many times I've read through it. You know, there are very few verses though that I can quote to you, chapter and verse. I mean, I got all of the good old standbys like John 3:16, you know. But if I quote a verse to somebody, I'm quoting a verse to somebody, okay? But if they say, where's that at in the Bible? Okay, now I got to get my Bible out because I know generally the general area, but I'm going to have to flip some pages and find it because I can't begin to tell you the chapter or verse because I don't study the Bible like that. And for the record, the Bible didn't have chapter and verse notations until late in the Middle Ages. It was like a Catholic monk that added all of that, and that has actually changed over the years. And that's something else that a lot of people throw a fit about. Well, this verse, and they moved a little bit. That wasn't even part of Scripture to start with. But I just, because I don't study the Bible. You know, read through your Bible in a year. You can read this many verses per day, and in a year, I have never studied Scripture like that. So I can't say it. Like if someone says, man, well, you know what Ephesians 3:8 says, don't you? Got no idea. Couldn't begin to tell you. If my life depended on it, swing low, sweet chariot, because it's over with. So, but now if that person says, well, Ephesians, whatever says this. Oh, I'm going to know the verse. But somebody say, yeah, but I can't stand because I know when I tell them I don't know, then they're going to start thinking, well, this guy must not love God much. He just ain't real studying disciple, man. Blessed little old heart. I know that's what's going on in their head. But if they continue the conversation, they will soon be surprised. But, so when he's talking about one of them Corinthians, I wouldn't be like that, but close.
Does not bring you closer nor further away from God.
My ear
so
itches.
what's the point of doing any of them?
But hold on. The point is that it literally said in the Scripture that it doesn't bring you no further or no closer. So what that means is it does not move said goalpost at all. So to have such a strong stance against something is kind of like a moot point. It has no effect. It's like complaining about the rain on your car. It's not going to impede the fact that your car's still going to do what it was intended to do because it was designed to withstand the rain anyway. You see what I'm saying? So we're saying you should not do these things, but the Bible clearly gives instruction on how we can move through these things and through these situations. It has already given us the guidance and saying that it doesn't bring you no closer or no further. Now, I agree with you guys as far as if we understand this is what God intended us to do, we should do those things. Like, for example, Passover.
Anyway, I don't know much longer he goes, and I think that coming up on 2.5 hours, I guess I've answered your questions, and whatever. So I guess I'm gonna close this out, and then I'm gonna connect these two separate files together in Adobe Premiere Pro. And, man, as big as this file is, I'll have to upload it to YouTube like I did the other ones, put it unlisted, and then I guess by now you've already gotten the link, and that's all already being done. So at any rate, that didn't work as well as I wanted it to. Oh, let's see. Oh yeah, here we go. Where is it? I guess y'all can hear that, but I can't hear it. It is not doing like I wanted it to do. Okay, anyway, I'm out.